Stephen Hawking, of course, died this year, but he has left behind writings, and I think there's a book as well, which we're now starting to see the content of. And here's a story. Wealthy will create super race. Stephen Hawking essays reveal dark prediction. A collection of newly published essays written by Stephen Hawking before his death revealed the iconic physicist believed wealthy people could create a new race of superhumans by editing their children's DNA. The collection of articles and essays, which has appeared in part in a British newspaper, will be published in their entirety in a book called Brief Answers to the Big Questions, which is actually out on October 16, so it's out already. Hawking, he died in March, writes that he's sure breakthroughs in genetic engineering will allow people to create a superhuman race within this century. He also predicted that while laws will prevent it, the rich and greedy will be unable to resist the temptation. I'm sure that during this century, he says, people will discover how to modify both intelligence and instincts, such as aggression. Laws will probably be passed against genetic engineering with humans, but some people won't be able to resist the temptation to improve human characteristics such as memory, resistance to disease, and length of life, etc. Hawking added that the emergence of a superior race will soon lead to implications for unimproved humans, whom he presumably will eventually, die out or become unimportant. Well, of course, the human race, in terms of its general population, is unimportant to these elite already. But what he's describing is a version of what's been in the books for quite a while, and that is creating the super race, where the elite bloodlines are upgraded, if you like, using these various technological potentials now, while the rest of the population is developed as a slave race. Now, people like Aldous Huxley in Brave New World were talking about precisely this, and that book came out in 1932. And this whole movement that I've been warning about towards control by artificial intelligence, whereby the human brain is connected to artificial intelligence and human intelligence then basically disappears, and artificial intelligence starts making the decisions, the thoughts, the emotional reactions, and that will control the slave race. That's the idea. While the super race, as Hawking talks about it, the superhuman race, will not be connected in the same way to AI, thus will not be controlled by AI. The superhuman race will control AI, and thus the thoughts, perceptions, and emotions of the population, while they operate on a completely different level of awareness and ability to free think. So it's interesting that although there are differences, that what Hawking is writing about in what he left at the time of his death is basically the same theme, although not the same necessarily detail, that I've been writing about. Now, I would also say that I think his timescale, when he says we'll be able to do this century, I think the timescale he's talking about is much longer than the reality of when they want to start to make these major changes. And one of the things they are doing and want to do in a much more extreme way is change the human body. Change the human body from eventually a biological body to a synthetic body. And here's a story again from this week. Human 2.0 is almost here. The transhuman agenda just went mainstream. This article says that the writers wrote in 2013, medical nanobots will connect brain to cloud computing. The emergence of DNA nanobots and nanocomputing has been paving the way to reverse engineer the human brain. This is what I've been writing about for years myself as well. As transhumanist and Google executive Ray Kurzweil detailed at the time, Human Body 2.0 would accelerate towards becoming a fully fledged reality sometime around 2020. He says here, Kurzweil, in the coming decades, a radical upgrading of our body's physical and mental systems already underway will use nanobots. These are nanotechnology, kind of microchips, but beyond just microchips, to augment and ultimately replace our organs. We already know how to prevent most degenerative disease through nutrition and supplementation. Well, the access he gets to that might, but not the general population. This, he said, will be a bridge to the emerging biotechnology revolution, which in turn will be a bridge to the nanotechnology revolution. By 2030, reverse engineering of the human brain will have been completed, and non-biological intelligence will merge with our biological brains. And this, if anyone's been coming to my events and read my recent books, they will know that I've been warning about this for quite a while, because this is the end game that they want. This is the end game of the end of human consciousness, and this is why it's so important that people just appreciate where this is going and how fast it's going. Another story in relation to AI, bizarre headline, but they are. Is a bicycle alive? Can an elephant fit through a house door? DARPA, technological development arm of the Pentagon that's driving all this, to teach AI, quote, common sense. Well, teach its bloody self common sense first. The US Military Research Agency will spend millions helping computers engage better with the real world, a necessary step en route to creating genuinely sentient robots and not just for calculating machines. And this is the other part, that the world is being taken over before our eyes by artificial intelligence, manifesting through robots and manifesting through technology and manifesting through this process of getting access to the human brain. Dave Gunning, a program manager in DARPA's Information Innovation Office, said, the absence of common sense prevents an intelligent system from understanding its world, communicating naturally with people, behaving reasonably in unforeseen situations, and learning new experiences. This absence is perhaps the most significant barrier between the narrowly focused AI applications we have today and the more general AI applications we would like to create in the future. So this article says, rather than stuffing them with complex algorithms for every situation, researchers want computers to organically imitate what learning babies go through as they grow and adjust to their environment. To do so, AI will need to understand how physical objects perform in the real world, the spatial relationship between them, and to recognize the basic psychology motivation of the living things around them. Well, yeah, that's one way of putting it. And that's one level of putting it. But from where I'm coming from, after seriously focused research on this over a long period, is that this algorithmic AI and this AI they're talking about, what they call learning AI, there are only some levels of it. There are other levels of it which they want to introduce into these technological systems, AI systems, which is actually conscious as we would perceive conscious. And that's waiting in the background. And once these connections are made on the grounds of, oh, it's only algorithmic AI, or it's only, this AI, once those connections are made, then the real full-blown AI they're not telling you about, that will come in. And that's the way they're hiding the reality of what's happening from the rest of us.